Coming to you from the WeWork studios here in our Santon offices, welcome to the launch of Aerial Art. It's a magnificent new book which is released by HPH Publishing, and I'm delighted to introduce you to the authors, Jan and Jay Roeder. My name is Boo Prince. I'm going to be your host here today, and we're going to be exploring this extraordinary new book. You can see it up here on the screen. Thank you, Jan and Jay, for being with us. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to speak to you guys.
Oh, it's so great to be here.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So we're going to talk today about this extraordinary adventure that you guys have been on for really more than a decade, which is documented in this magnificent book, Aerial Art. It's just been released. And I'm sure that if you're sitting at home watching this, you're wondering, well, why are there two books on the screen? We're going to tell you a little bit more about that as we go along. But in essence, there are two editions. And one of them is the standard edition. That's the one with the flamingos on the cover, magnificent flamingos. And what is this, the special edition? What is that picture of?
It's of salt pans in northern Natasha after some heavy rains, and the water evaporates into these incredible colors and shapes.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
The amazing thing about that is that it was actually by accident. We were flying to Odangwa, and we were flying quite high because it was just getting from point A to point B, and we saw these incredible, psychedelic features on the ground, and we ended up spending about an hour, and we had about 5 minutes fuel left. So we caught those pictures purely by chance, which is always sometimes some of the most amazing pictures you get.
Absolutely. And I think often, if you don't see the aerial view of salt pans, you would never know that those salt crystals reflect light and so on in such amazing ways that you get those incredible colors. So that's absolutely stunning. But now I want to get into some of the pictures, some of the stories, because you guys have had the most remarkable adventure. And when I hear you say we had 5 minutes of gas left, but we were sort of flying for an hour, you guys literally are the epitome of adventurers who fly by the seat of your pants. Right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Jay, you were an environmental consultant before doing this.
Yes, yes.
And Jan, you were, of all things,
an accountant.
An accountant!
Strangest accountant I know.
So you completely have, gone to go and live the dream. You gave up your job, you bought an aeroplane, decided to go flying.
Yeah, look, it was a life-changing decision for us because we had a normal job like everybody else, and I decided to get my pilot's license, and that just opened up a whole new world for us. And we one day just said, well, let's just call it quits on everything and jump in the plane, and we became air hippies for 4 or 5 years. And it was an incredible journey, and something that I think everybody should follow their dream and go out there and do what you've always wanted to do. It's not as difficult as you think. It's that first decision. It's that first 5 seconds of making that decision and just doing it and going for it. And then you can...
Yeah, because when Jan got his pilot's license, he was in his late 30s.
Right.
And all the other guys at the flight school were 17, 18, and they called him Opa.
No.
Well, not Opa, they call me Worm.
Worm, okay, Worm.
Come on.
Yeah. So I mean, it's very late in the day to get a pilot's license. I mean, most of the guys are 17, 18. And that choice of Jan's to get his pilot's license changed the trajectory of the rest of our lives.
Right.
I mean, it was really, a lot of people talk about, you've got to know your passion. This was something that just happened to us and it fell into our lap. And by doing it more and more and more, we just became more and more obsessed with seeing these wilderness spaces from above.
That's extraordinary. Tell me where this picture is from. I mean, it's absolutely staggeringly beautiful.
This is the Bazaruta archipelago in Mozambique.
Okay.
And at about midday, between 10 o'clock and midday, the tide goes out and all these incredible sandbanks pop out from underneath the ocean in this, like lightning bolts under the water, and every day is different. It's an ephemeral scene, so every time we fly it's different. You're never going to capture the same scene twice. It's like a giant treasure hunt.
I love that idea, a giant treasure hunt. This is Botswana.
Yes.
So you guys focused on 4 countries, right? And Namibia, Botswana, Mozambique, and South Africa.
Yes.
So this offers us really an entirely new window onto kind of Southern Africa. I know when I first saw your book and I sat down with my 2 little boys to go through the book, and their eyes were just falling out of their heads because they said to me, "Mummy, we never knew that the world could look like this." And I was so touched by that because I think we tend to sort of see the world, when we see it from above, like an aerial view, we tend to think of kind of Google Earth. Or shots from space, right?
Yeah.
But this almost sort of low flying where you get to still see the colors and the textures and the animals. It's actually a really different perspective.
Yeah, I know, it really is. And I think it's, you know, the beauty about Southern Africa is we've got some of the most amazing deserts. We've got the Delta, which is the true Eden of Africa. And then we've got the blue ocean and the amazing coastline of Mozambique. So within a 5-hour flight for us, we've got access to some of the most beautiful nature in the world. And it is a different perspective. It's just an incredible way to see the world, and also to take people up. We've taken people up and showed them where they live. And it's quite amazing. We took a guy up in Mozambique once, and you know, he lives in one environment and he sees the same thing every day, and you know, he works hard. They're on dhows and dugouts, and you know, for them, he doesn't see the beauty of where he lives. And we took this guy up, and he had tears in his eyes because he didn't realize how beautiful the environment is that he actually lives in. And you only get that from an aerial perspective. You really see the beauty of where we live.
Yeah.
And I think also with an aerial perspective, you know, a lot of conservation campaigns focus on, you know, the face of an animal. So it'd be rhinos and elephants and wild dog, and that's really super important. But, you know, I think the perspective that aerial photography gives us is we start seeing ecosystems as organisms in their own right that hold all this life. And, you know, and they're just so spectacular, the colors, the textures, the patterns. And you know, we start looking at this river system or this mountain range as something to protect.
Yes.
And you know, we've actually said in our book, you know, we couldn't have done this alone. It's a grand collaboration with nature. So we thank the rivers and the mountains for collaborating with us to help us create these beautiful books. And you know, I think our photography as well is a form of activism, because it's our way of communicating our passion for these incredible wildlife spaces. You know, I don't think you can really photograph wildlife or landscape if you're not in love with it. And you know, many times when Jan and I have been flying, you know, I pinch myself. You know, we're flying over the Save River estuary or some incredible landscape it's almost like living in a parallel universe for a moment. And I just pinch myself and I feel so privileged. And then I want to share these incredible scenes with other people. And so it's our way of communicating our passion for these incredible spaces.
Well, you've done it, you know, so incredibly powerfully and so beautifully. And I think we've got a shot coming up about you guys kind of living in your aeroplane. Here we go. And I just love this picture because, you know, so I went through this period in my early 20s of reading, as I guess many people do, in that sort of search for yourself and the existential crisis of your 20s. But I read a lot of Richard Bach. You know, Richard Bach, who wrote, what was it? Jonathan Livingston Seagull. Yeah. And he also wrote The Bridge Across Forever and so on. And if you've never read Richard Bach, go and get yourself a Richard Bach book. Because he talks so much about, you know, living with an aeroplane and camping under the wing and so on. Yeah. And you guys basically left your lives to go and live a Richard Bach existence with a small aircraft. Tell us a little bit about your plane there, Jan.
The plane itself is a Jabiru, which is an Australian manufactured plane, but we specifically modified it for photography because you can. It's an experimental aircraft. So we've cut holes wherever we can. You know, Jay, you know, the final last straw was when Jay came to me and she said, "Can I cut a hole at the bottom of the plane?" I said, "Love, no, that's, you know, that's the last
limits.
now. You know, there's limits."
Enough room.
So the nice thing about the plane is that it's very quiet, which is excellent for not disturbing the animals and the landscape beneath us. So we can take aerial shots, and you'll see some shots a little bit later where you can see the animals aren't disturbed, and that really does distinguish some of our work from others, because a lot of times, you know, you'll see aerial photographs and animals are running away or scared or looking up, where in our case it isn't. So it's great to capture that moment without disturbing it, and then you have a true reflection of what you see and what's happening. So no, it's an incredibly nice aircraft for photography specifically.
And it's a great little area because it's got high wings.
Right.
And it's got great range, so you can get, you know, what is it, 600 kilometers odd on a tank.
Wow.
And it's cheaper to fly than driving a Land Cruiser. So,
well, especially with toll roads.
Yeah, exactly. There's no police, there's no roadblocks, it's great. So, no, she's a great little aircraft, and we've flown over 200,000 nautical miles in her. And she's a great little area.
That's incredible. Does she have a name?
We've pushed her to the limits. No, she doesn't.
She doesn't. She's Echo Zulu Papa.
Yeah.
Echo Zulu Papa.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And speaking of names, you have a little Juno sky dog.
I do. Yes.
Which is just extraordinary. You know, I've heard a lot about like ship's cats, but I've never heard about an airplane dog. A sky dog, Juno sky dog. I love that.
Yeah, we rescued her in Standerton.
Yeah.
And she was just a tiny little puppy, so she came flying with us from day dot, and she just got used to it. So she's like our wing dog.
That's amazing. Well, she landed with her tail firmly in the butter.
She did. I think she's got more air miles than most humans.
It's extraordinary. Absolutely extraordinary. So let's talk a little bit about the practicalities and the experience of making a book like this and taking these kinds of photos, because we can look at the book and it is absolutely epic in its scope and its beauty. But the reality is you're flying over very, very remote areas, and when you land, you don't know what's there. So what happens when you land?
Well, you know, it's very difficult with weather to really plan a trip. So what we did as air hippies is we just kind of plot a general route of what we wanted to go and experience, and then land at various airfields when it was right. But then when you land, you're stuck because you've got no vehicles, and a lot of these airfields are in the middle of nowhere.
Sure.
So particularly in Namibia, it's quite difficult because there's no one. But in Botswana and Mozambique, normally if you land, within an hour or two, somebody is going to come past the airfield.
Like a local donkey taxi or something.
So we've been picked up by donkey carts, old battered up trucks. We've ridden on the handlebars of old rickety bicycles. We've the battery often goes flat if it's very cold, so we've had farmers help us jumpstart our aeroplane.
That's fantastic.
But I mean, it's incredible though. How generous people are.
Yes.
You know, wherever we've gone, we have never come short. No matter what it is, whether it be a spare part or getting a lift into town or getting avgas or anything, there's always been a guardian angel that comes along out of the bushes and goes, "Hey, can we help you?"
And tell me about one or two of the most extraordinary people that you've met, because I mean, there must have been some really incredible characters along the way.
Yeah, I think in Namibia we met a diamond diver, which had quite a colourful history on what he's done in Namibia. And in northern Namibia, we landed one day. I landed, and Jay on that particular trip had a car, but she couldn't find the airfield. It's not an airfield; it was a pan. Eventually got one of the local guys to, the car was packed with avgas and everything, and he refused to sit in the car.
Right.
So he said, no, he'll sit on the roof of the car and direct it towards the airfield. And I was just sitting there and, you know, out on the horizon here, I see Jay with a guy on top of the car just directing.
He was a San Bushman tracker, and he just sat on my spare tire on top of the on top of the roof. And I said, that was a great entrance. It was just dust, and I had a guy on the roof, and, I've arrived. So it was great. Yeah.
And this was us interesting people. I think these were Angolans that we parked under the wing of a Lucian in northern Namibia. And they just
So it's amazing to see the scale.
Yeah,
the scale
and they couldn't
aircraft.
stop laughing because my plane is the size of one of the engines, and it breaks your ego a little bit if you park and everybody laughs at you and they look at you in your plane.
But we were quite cheeky because
funny.
Angolan Defence Force, they're all Russian guys, and we just
Right.
and it was so hot. It was in the high 40s, so we just tootled up and parked under the shade of their wing.
So in real terms, does your plane feel like, I'm just sort of thinking about how do we explain the size of your plane? Is it sort of like driving a car, but you've just got a longer tail sort of thing?
Yeah. It's the size inside the size of a small car.
Yeah.
And it's a small plane.
Yes.
It really is. Sometimes we surprise people. I remember we had a friend of ours that wanted to go flying with us, and we just met them. We were in Botswana. And she said, no, please, let's go flying. And I said, no, it's fine. I said, but, do realize the plane's very small. She said, no, of course. And we were at the airport. I said to her, okay, fine. I think maybe just, go to the bathroom before we go. And she said, no, don't worry. I'll go when I'm in the plane. I think
maybe she doesn't understand that. No onboard bathroom.
Which can be tricky on a 6-hour flight. Yeah,
sure. Okay, well, I know we've got some amazing stories coming up. I just want to share with everybody that now this version of the book, the book is called Aerial Art. Okay, if you didn't catch that in the beginning. And my guests, Jay and Jan Roeder, who are the authors of this magnificent book. And this particular cover version, this is the special edition. And I have to show you this because it's absolutely amazing. When you open the book, you see it's got this very fancy magnet on the side. And then you open it and it's got this double magnet doorway here, which protects the book beautifully because the book is a collector's edition. So you want to keep it in pristine condition. And then, obviously, you can open to any of these absolutely magnificent photographs. But now this particular edition, when you order it from HPH Publishing, you will actually receive a 2,000 Rand gift voucher, which is just an incredible offer. And that can go towards any of the prints. And any of the photos in the book are available as limited edition prints. Is that correct?
Yes. And at a beautiful printer, Art of Print. They do a fantastic job on archival papers. And you can choose any print in the book.
Stunning. And I suppose that in terms of printing options, one could also get prints done on canvas as well. Hey?
Any material.
Those archival papers are just absolutely amazing, and they can sort of, they're called archival because they last for like 100 years or something like that, don't they? It's amazing.
So they don't lose their color, and so you can do canvas or paper, or they've got these incredible metallic prints, and so you can choose whatever.
And it's such an amazing sort of art piece for one's home or office or waiting room or anything like that, because it's not just a piece of art, but it exists there also to educate and entertain and wow, it's just an incredible
and I think
piece.
also aerial photographs got this spaciousness, so they by default very calming, so you if you've got one on your wall, it's very calming and peaceful, and your mind wanders into these beautiful images.
Yes. So speaking of peaceful and calming, this is such a beautiful picture. This is off the coast of Mozambique, is that correct?
Yes, far north of Carimbas Archipelago.
Okay, and this photo kind of represents the beginning of a dramatic adventure and an extraordinary story that I believe starts with you in a bikini, Jay.
One bit of advice to everybody: don't go flying in a bikini because you never know where you're going to end up.
Coming from someone who knows.
I know
So
this.
you remember when your mum always tells you, like, make sure you're wearing, like, decent underpants and whatever, because, you know, you never know if you're going to be in a crash or something. This advice about the bikini comes from personal experience.
From experience.
Tell us the story. What happened?
Well, so we were just flying over the archipelago, doing an aerial expedition and taking photographs of all the coral reefs and the beautiful islands. It was so hot. It was December. I was in my bikini, and we just headed off on a normal flight, and then we sprung a fuel leak. And I'll let Jan tell the rest of the story.
Yeah, so, I mean, yeah, we had a fuel leak and I had to do a precautionary landing. So we found the closest island because we were quite deep into the Indian Ocean. It was Matemu Island. I did a precautionary, so you do certain procedures. And we came down, everything was fine. And just before we landed, there was because it was a dilapidated island and dilapidated airfield. There was a bush in the middle of the runway, and I thought I'll just move a little bit as I came in to the right so I don't hit the bush. And within seconds, my right wing clipped a bush, a tree, and we spun off at about 140 kilometers an hour. And crashed into the only other palm tree next to the airfield.
Because it jumped out at you.
Yeah. But it was fairly spectacular. I mean, the plane nearly toppled over. Both wings broke off. The fuel bladders broke then, and we were covered with gas.
Wow.
And that's probably one of the most dangerous things of a plane crash is that it can catch light. We were sitting there and just realized we had to run out of there as quickly as possible.
And it's so funny because you contemplate crashing, obviously, when you fly.
Of course.
And you always think, okay, well, if it happens, you're going to have time to, put yourself in brace position. But all I ended up doing was like spider position. As we landed. And and then all of a sudden, there you are standing on a deserted island in a bikini, covered in avgas. And there's just some little isolated fishing communities on this island, and we're like, oh my goodness, what now? So we felt very vulnerable at that moment. Yeah. But I said to Jan, well, at least, whenever he does things properly. At least it wasn't like Paris airfield going for a coffee, on a Saturday morning. At least do it properly, crash on a remote island, a whole big adventure ahead. And it was actually great because we ended up having to cut the wings off and got local guys to help carry her down to the beach, put her on a
I just have to say, I've never heard anyone say, actually, it was great. We had to cut the wings of our aircraft. So I'm glad you've got a sense of humor about it, right?
There's always two ways in life to look at things,
That's true.
Yeah. And this was just, who gets to do this? It's a great adventure in how we're going to get our airplane off the island. And we, I never ever thought we'd get to sail our airplane back to Pemba.
And I mean, most pilots got to crash once or twice, so we've done it now and we survived it. And it was actually an amazing experience afterwards. Just to get the plane back to South Africa took about 8 months. But the whole experience taught us a lot of things, but it taught us also to kind of keep going no matter what. It's these things happen, and we were blessed enough to survive it. And then just carry on and keep on doing it. It is dangerous what we do. We've had a lot of close encounters. This was obviously the closest. But if your passion is strong enough and your will to do it, then it overrides all the fear and everything like that. So.
Well, I wanted to talk to you about that because when you embark on an adventure like this. For those of us who sort of stay home and deal with the mundanities of work and family and pets and cleaning the house and all that kind of stuff, it's so easy to dream about this big adventure. I'm going to ditch everything and I'm going to buy a plane and I'm going to go and fly over Africa. But we seldom think about actually the need to let go of all the things that we hold on to which keep us feeling safe. Yeah. And to me, that's kind of almost the biggest adventure of all, right? Is how you guys must have grown in your own sense of trust and self-confidence and resilience and all those things that one doesn't really think about when one thinks about, I'm going on a grand wildlife adventure. So tell me a little bit about how you feel you have grown through this entire experience.
Yeah, I think it's, before we started, we had, like I said, the normal life, and we did what everybody else does in the rat race. And the decision to do this and suddenly take that leap of faith, you realize that how little you need in life, first of all. You don't have to have a lot of money to make your dreams come true. You just, a lot of people ask me, like, but you've got an airplane, you've got this, and I said to them, but the normal person would just, they'd upgrade their car from a 300,000 rand car to a 500,000. That's not a problem. Everybody does that. Or go from one neighborhood and live in a 2 million house to a 3 million house, and that's acceptable. But to do this, you don't need all of that. You can just let go of what makes you feel safe and just jump into a life that brings adventure to you. It's not safe, but that's what I learned. The beauty of life is not being safe, not being attached to the same routine every day. If you've got a different routine, you don't know what lies ahead. It's the uncertainty of what we do has created the people we are, that we know we just need each other and we just need life, and then the rest will happen. So
actually a few years ago I said to Jan, shouldn't we be more adults, like more grown up, and shouldn't we like pay off our bond or something, or have a share portfolio or something like that? And he said, okay, Jay, just hang on. He said, close your eyes.
Remember, I'm the accountant.
Yeah,
it's a little bit of
that's the grandest irony. We have to keep reminding ourselves, right?
And he says, okay, Jay, just close your eyes. And now imagine all the beautiful things that we've experienced together. Antarctica and South America and Bolivia and flying over Namibia and all these incredible things. He says, now take them out of yourself, one by one by one. And now how do you feel? And I said, well, actually, I feel really small. And, and I think that's the thing with these, when you throw yourself out there into these grand adventures, you really build as a person. You learn so much about the world. It ends prejudice because you meet so many different people living so many different lives. There's no one way of doing life, so you accept yourself more. And, honestly, like Jan says, you don't need a lot. And a few years ago, I walked the Camino. It's that
the Camino in Spain.
900-kilometer walk. And you go with a little 5K backpack and a couple of knickers and a pair of slip-slops and a toothbrush. And I really realized then, and with our flying, that you really don't need a lot to be happy. In fact, the less you have, the happier you are.
There's a movie called Happy. And the whole premise of it is that the first, that does money create happiness? And they said that, when you from nothing to just covering your basic needs, there's a direct correlation between money and happiness. And your direct needs is food on the table, clothes on your back, and a house to live in. But beyond that, there's no correlation between money and happiness. So if you have your basic needs, and the problem is our basic needs increase. We think the bigger house is a basic need, but it's not. So if you just keep to a very basic principle of basic needs, then you've got the world your oyster, and you can truly follow your dream and do what you put your mind at. It's what you perceive to be important in life that is where you're going to be directed into. So we just shifted our mind and said, well, what's important is not the way we live in Johannesburg, it's not what we own, it's not what we drive, it's not. What's important is our experience of life, and we directed all our energy and all our money, everything into that, and then it opens up a whole new world.
I think there's an amazing kind of freeing up, right? And it is its own form of wealth, because there's so many different ideas around wealth. And when I look at these staggering pictures, is that not a wealth of flamingos, a richness of flamingos? They're so absolutely amazing. And of course, this is the picture, or one of, yes, it is the picture, from the standard edition of aerial art, which is this one. Absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous cover, and so unusual as well. And the eye immediately goes to the bright wings. I must tell you, because I'm such a nerd, that I really love the scientific names of animals, and the idea of Phoenicopterus ruba or Phoenicopterus major, which is the scientific name for the greater and the lesser flamingo, meaning the flame wing. Which, I mean, it's so beautiful, isn't it? And you can really see the flame color on the wings, which is just so absolutely stunning. So this is the standard edition of aerial art. And you can also purchase this one from HPH Publishing's website. And this one comes with a gift voucher worth 500 Rand. So there is so much value in these books. Also to create real beauty in your home. And speaking of beauty and speaking of wealth, I'm very keen to have a look at one or two more of the pictures in the book. This is an amazing one because I think this really illustrates what you were talking about in terms of not disturbing the animals.
Yeah.
Tell me where you took this picture, these beautiful zebras.
This is Nama Brand.
Okay.
It's the biggest private nature reserve in Southern Africa.
Oh, really?
And it abuts the Nile Cliff, so it's just part of this massive wilderness area, and it's one of my favorite places on earth. I absolutely adore Nama Brand. And so it's very dry, so these little black spots or grey spots are dry grass. And Jan and I have flown Nama Brand flat, and every time we go, it's something different. You know, if it's rained, it's green. If it's been very dry, it's like this. And with our plane, what's so wonderful is that because it is so quiet, the animals are absolutely blissfully unaware of us. So you can capture these amazing little moments in time where you just feel like a fly on the wall. And you know, these tender moments with hippos. These were stingrays of Bazaruto Island.
I mean, just
flying in formation.
Hey?
Yeah, absolutely gorgeous.
It really is. I mean, it's completely underwater flying, and just that the clarity of that water is absolutely staggering. Tell me about your feelings when you're flying over something absolutely amazing. I mean, I must say that I think one of the reasons why I'm not a photographer is because when I see something amazing, I'm so drawn to just wanting to live the moment and imprint it on my memory. And I know that for photographers, the inclination is, I need to capture that moment. But talk to me about your feelings when you see something amazing.
I think when I first started with aerial photography, I was a bit trigger happy.
Sure.
But as I've done this more and more and more, I can see a shot, and then I do sit back and I just take it all in because. But it's difficult because as you fly and you're going quite fast, so the landscape's changing beneath you, and scenes whip by beneath your airplane so quickly that you've got to be on the job. But Jan and I.
But in the beginning we had a solution to that. Right in the beginning, Jay used to shout, "Stop!" I'm like,
Sorry, can you just reverse it? I need to get that shot. Yeah, stop.
So Jan's been very, very patient with me because he'll be flying. I'm blissfully unaware of what he's actually having to dodge while flying, and I've got my lens to my eye, and I'll go, Jan, get your wing out of my shot, and go more left, and then he'll say, babes, I can't go more left. Just take your eye off the camera, and there we are, right against the edge of a mountain or a dune. I'm like, okay.
She directs me from the back, because she sits at the back and I'm in the front. So,
right.
Yeah, I get very strict instructions on lower, bank more. I'm like, babes, we're nearly upside down. But,
Jan's so used to flying in orbits that he doesn't even know how to fly straight anymore.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
And tell me, are you guys using radio comms, or you can just speak to each other?
No, radio comms.
Yeah.
So no, I mean it's a lot of fun. The one little issue in the beginning with the radio comms is. When an airplane stalls, it's got a stall warning, and it's quite a loud sound that goes off in my ears, which means if a plane stalls, you're going to start losing altitude very quickly. And I remember one day we just took off, and that's one of the most dangerous parts when just taking off and you have a stall warning. and Jay started whistling without me knowing it, and I thought we were in a stall. And then I started going through all the procedures of emergency landing and stuff, and I looked at her and she's like, I'm like, babe, you can't do that. I'm happy. No,
It drives me nuts when my
fun.
kids whistle in the car because it's also this confined space.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna, from now on, I'm gonna say that's a stall warning. Yeah. Now tell me about this picture, because I understand that you guys have also started taking guests on aerial photography tours, which is absolutely fantastic, because obviously, you know, everyone wants to have some of the experience that you guys have had, which is so extraordinary.
I know, it's super exciting, you know, because at some stage when you've been flying a lot and you want to share it, and people are asking, well, we also want to see that.
Yeah.
And so we've started a company called Aerial Africa.
Okay.
And we've put together some amazing safaris, taking people to our favorite places to experience Africa from above. And we also offer aerial photographic workshops. Very intensive, you know, this is for the hardcore photographer that wants to get those aerial shots, and we're based in one location, and then we go out every day, Mozambique, Botswana, Namibia, and it's very exciting. So it
ranges from your photographic workshops, like Jay said, for your really intense professional photographers that we spend a lot of time in the air, and they're short, and then it goes on to self-fly expeditions. So we'll be the lead plane, and then other pilots can join us because we know where to go, where to land, and we know the lay of the land.
You know the good spots.
Yes,
and then all the admin,
and then the last one is the aerial safaris, where that's mostly based in charters, helicopters, so that's for a lot of times for international clients, and that's, we take them to the best lodges and the best spots and a picnic in the middle of the desert. And but as you would have a game drive, you had 2 game drives normally, now you just have 1 game drive and 1 game flight, so we want to introduce flying.
That is so next level. I love that. So one could actually even think of the aerial art book as kind of like a brochure, of places that clients might want to go to, which is absolutely stunning. Because I mean, that's the thing, for people who want or who have the means to do these kinds of trips, it's usually not a question so much of how much does it cost as it is a question of, well, where do we go? Because they're lacking the experience and the knowledge and so on. And that's obviously where you guys are experts.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's amazing. Now you mentioned earlier about taking people flying who have not had the opportunity. And this looks like one of the little local chaps that you met somewhere on your adventures.
These were orphans in Pemba, so we took the whole orphanage flying.
Oh, wow.
And
it started off with 2, and the lady that we met said, "Oh no, would you like to take them?" We said, "No, it's fine." And then she said, "But can some of the other people in the orphans come?" And we said, "Yeah, no." It ended up, I think, 16 or 20 orphans. And and we said, "Okay, well, there's a couple of days worth of flying."
But it was, I mean, it's always amazing because you just look at the little faces and just seeing them all from a totally different perspective, and then asking them afterwards, what did you think? And you're just speechless. Yeah. And I think this little guy said to us, he said, it was like a giant spinach pie. Oh, and I think it's because in Mozambique, I don't know if you've ever had matapa.
No.
So it's kind of coconut milk with cassava leaves.
Oh, wow.
And when you boil it, it looks like little islands floating on. So I don't know if that was what he was talking about.
Very similar colour scheme to the Mozambican coastline.
But it's amazing because, of course, everybody describes their own, it describes their impressions of things based on their own life experience. So that's his description based on his life experience. Yes. But I think that what is so incredible, Jay, you were talking about photography and aerial photography in your case as being a form of activism. And one of the things that I always think so much about conservation is that conservation so often tends to focus on the animals themselves. But of course, the animals can take care of themselves, right? What we need to focus on actually is our relationships with communities and helping communities see their own environments in terms of a larger context, which is precisely what you were talking about, Jan. And so that sort of opportunity for a group of kids who might never otherwise have the opportunity to see their own home from the sky becomes a life-changing experience in terms of their impressions of my place in the world and what my world looks like.
I think that's probably one of the most rewarding things out of all of this is and it honestly is to take, you know, people that really have never ever been in an aircraft, they've, you know, it's never been in their sphere of reference or anything, and then to take them up and take them, you know, low and slow and show them this world. I mean, it really is, you can see in their faces, it's a memory that will be last with them forever. So
it's
that,
life-changing.
it is life-changing.
And like you say, I mean, with conservation, if we don't partner with communities, then we're fighting a losing battle.
Absolutely.
So the more we can get everybody to fall in love with nature, you know, and falling in love is the only way that we're going to conserve.
That's true.
You know, unless we feel invested in it, that we love it, we're not going to want to conserve it. And I think a lot of local communities, you know, they grow up in a natural environment where nature's almost the enemy. You know, the elephants are eating my crops and this and that.
Sure.
And you've got all these rich tourists coming in with their cameras into the nature. And they don't, you know, and then when they get the opportunity to go on a game drive or a flight, go,
right.
You know, this is what everybody's on about. And I'm proud of my home.
Yeah,
and
it's that whole thing of how sort of old world models of conservation are all about kind of, you know, preserving an area and keeping local people out. And it's such an outdated, old-fashioned, colonial, horrific idea.
Absolutely, so
because
integrated.
The minute people feel excluded, they feel resentful, as one can well imagine.
Absolutely.
And so that opportunity to include people, involve people, let them feel proud of what their home is all about is just extraordinary. It's an amazing form of activism.
Yeah, thanks. No, it's very rewarding.
So speaking about amazing and beautiful, tell me where this is.
This is the Walvis Bay Lagoon.
Okay.
And it's a Ramsar.
Are these pelicans?
They are flamingos.
Flamingos as well.
And the Walvis Bay Lagoon is absolutely incredible. That whole area, it's a Ramsar site, which makes it a wetland of international importance.
Right.
And it's one of the most important, I think it's one of the 4 most important wetlands in Africa, and one of the biggest breeding places for flamingo. And it's absolutely spectacular. So, you know, you've got a lot of salt pans that it's not just flamingos, it's pelican, terns, migratory birds, in their hundreds of thousands. And it's a very special place.
I love it as well. And I also love, you know, some of the other animals that sort of interact with the seabirds. Like you always see jackal along the coast there, you know, trying to catch flamingos and pelican babies and things like it. Amazing, amazing. Tell us where this is.
This is south of Indian Barn, and it was just this beautiful morning. We were flying, and these tranquil scenes of dhows, fishermen, you know, about to launch and go out fishing for the day.
And I think what really strikes me about this picture is that in many ways this is like a classic example of communities living in sustainability, a sustainable relationship with nature, right? They're subsistence fishermen.
Yes.
They're not these giant trawlers who are literally kind of cleaning out the sea. There's that sense of kind of give and take with the environment. This one also blows my mind because it kind of looks, I mean, even though there's a tree and I'm assuming these are rivers.
Yes.
That kind of look like trees as well. There's also something that says to me this is like a lung.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
It's got the same.
Well, it's fascinating. It's called fractals. Yeah, so fractals are these patterns that replicate over and over again in nature.
Yes.
So, you know, a lung, a tree, veins, broccoli, lightning, and you see these things replicated over and over again. And I think that's what's so fascinating about aerial photography, is seeing these patterns appearing in so many different forms.
Re-emerging
in the strangest places.
That's
so yeah,
amazing.
this is Dead Flay in Namibia, and it's an 800-year-old river that once flowed across this desert pan in an old acacia tree.
So this photo kind of this is a real double take photo, right?
Yeah.
You kind of look at it and you're like, where's the animal? And it takes you a second to realize that that's a shadow, and actually the gemsbok is standing on the edge of the ring. Are these those rings in Namibia which are created by insects?
Well, it's fairy circles. So the whole of the central Namibia, as well as northern Namibia, has got hundreds and thousands of hectares of these fairy circles, and there's a lot of debate about how they get created. No one has got concrete evidence of what actually causes them. Oh. So there's, some say it's termites that cause it. Some say it's the animals that then eat, because the termites eat it, hey?
Yes.
And then,
And then water competition between grass species.
Okay.
They say that the center of the fairy circle is almost like a little well.
Right.
And the grasses collaborate.
So they kind of get sweeter there, and the animals eat them all there.
Yeah, and
right.
but now they're saying it's a combination between termites, water competition.
I love that no one knows.
Yeah,
very
it
makes it that much more interesting.
Magical.
Yes,
magical.
There's also an alien theory, which is probably...
Of course,
Footprints of the gods.
But it's wonderful to have those kind of magical, mysterious moments that don't have an answer, because that is actually part of what draws us into the mystery of nature, and recognizing our own smallness in the vastness, which is so amazing.
And what's quite nice with the Nama Brand Foundation, you can actually adopt a fairy circle as a
really?
gift, which is kind of, when people adopt stars, so you can get the coordinates of your fairy circle.
Oh, that's
and go and have dinner in a fairy circle. So
Very
it's a
romantic.
nice present, yeah.
Do you know what I also love about that idea is not even so much the adopting of it, but calling it a fairy circle is, when we were growing up, the vast majority of children's books with any form of magic, I mean, obviously way before Harry Potter, were all kind of like Enid Blyton type books, and they all had fairies and elves and fairy circles and whatever, and they always felt so out of reach to us here in Africa, because those were like British things.
Yes.
So to have our own fairy circles feels extra special. Extra special. Are these desert elephants?
Yeah, this was Damaraland, northern Namibia. But this took us, we spent, I think, close to 3 weeks flying every single day, twice a day, early morning and late afternoon. And literally on the very last flight, after 3 weeks of flying, we were in search of the desert elephants. And on our last flight, we came across the herd. And that was I think that was an incredible, magical moment to see them.
It was. It was so special.
Yeah,
Because they wander up these ephemeral rivers,
yes.
the Hoornip and all these evocative rivers, sand rivers. And they're the original water dowsers, they dig down to find water, and then you find these incredible little hidden oases between dunes that nobody knows about, and you'll find the Ellies there.
The elephants know.
They know. So, it was really special finding them.
Wow.
But there's not that many left, so
Indeed.
you've got to search for them.
Well, I think there's also, I mean, as I was looking through the book, I just couldn't help feeling that kind of almost bittersweet feeling of, I hope this isn't documentation of what we're losing.
Yeah.
Because it is so spectacular. And I suppose in a way, photography always is documentation of what you're losing, in the sense that the earth is consistently evolving and changing, exactly like you were talking about the sand dunes under the shallow waters in Mozambique.
Yeah,
that it's a snapshot in time. It's a record of a moment.
But it is, the last 15 years we've noticed changes, especially along the Mozambican coastline.
Really?
Particularly all the logging, huge swathes of forest being cut down, and
I mean, we see the good and the bad. So because we've got an aerial view, like Jade said, we see that, unfortunately, the destruction. We see the coal mining, we see the logging, we see, the Mozambican coastline now it's become rice paddies, and there's no more natural forests for a big part of it. You fly over South Africa and you've got one coal mine after the next. And the most shocking flight is Joburg to Kruger. That'll bring tears to your eyes if you see what.
Tell me some good news. What good things have you seen changing or repairing or healing?
Well, I think what is wonderful is in Southern Africa, we really have, it's the most enormous tract of wilderness. If you think of Xhosa, Namibia, Botswana, it's just this enormous wilderness space with a very, very, very low population density. So those areas aren't really changing that we've noticed. So these, and maybe because they're inhospitable in many ways. There's not a lot of people, so it's just, if there's I don't know, it makes me feel when I'm having a stressed out day and I'm in my car in traffic, I just think about these vast spaces that are existing there all the time and that I can pull on.
And the Delta is so well protected and so well conserved. It's incredible that that area, Botswana's done a lot to make sure that that's protected. And the elephants.
But there's a lot of good
news. The elephant herds there are incredible. It's mind blowing. So there's a lot of good news. There's a lot of
and so many people doing such good work. Really.
That's really heartening to hear, because we do hear so many sad stories. I want to touch on, if we can go back one photo, just explain this to me, because it's quite bizarre. I mean, it all looks man-made, and yet it's clearly somewhere very, very remote. So what is this picture?
This is an old Decca navigation system off the Skeleton Coast of Namibia. And there used to be cables laid where these lines are. And that's how they would communicate with ships out in the open seas.
Oh, wow.
And that whole system's changed, and they ripped the cables out at some stage. And it's just left this incredible pattern.
Isn't that amazing? And you probably wouldn't be able to see that pattern if you're standing down on the ground.
And also not now, because now, the desert is kind of, the sand has washed it away.
And there's another picture a few shots back, which can only be the Skeleton Coast of the ship in the sand. What an extraordinary picture, hey? A real sort of ghost ship.
I think the incredible thing about this angle, it's the Edward Berlin that ran aground in 1908. I think the incredible thing about that shot is that if you look at the shadow itself, the shadow is completely intact, where the actual, if you're on the ground, the ship is complete wreck.
Wow.
So,
but the shadow
angle.
of it is
the shadow is perfect.
Isn't that amazing?
It's quite. You just want to see a pirate kind of walking on that shadow. The ghost of a pirate.
I'm sure on a dark night.
Jack Sparrow.
Jack Sparrow creeping around the corner. No, absolutely. So guys, what happens next before you literally fly off into the sunset? Have you got another wilderness on your horizons that you're planning on exploring?
Well, at the moment we're talking to, we do a lot of pro bono work for conservation organizations. We donate a lot of our images to various organizations that they use for educational purposes. So there are a couple of exciting expeditions planned for next year, particularly in Mozambique, documenting various rivers, systems, and mangrove forests particularly. And then I think our next big adventure is we're packing up in Joburg, and we're going to be moving to Botswana.
Wow.
We're going to live a little hippie existence in the Okavango Delta. So that's our next, and we're just going to base ourselves out of the Okavango.
That's fantastic.
Which is very exciting.
I think it's now, we want to eventually cover the entire African continent as much as we can, within reason. So we're going to just carry on. We're doing Malawi and Tanzania, and just see, that we've got 30 years ahead of us, and see how we can document the continent from the air. And during that, offer our services and our safaris to our clients and workshops and things. So a lot of exciting stuff.
So that is really exciting, and I think that when one when you're talking about kind of donating your images and that kind of thing, it makes you realize that this beautiful book, Aerial Art, is not just a piece of art. It is activism, as we were saying, but it's also its own form of conservation, right? That you can donate those images because you have the opportunity to actually sell the work. So it puts you in a position to be able to help those organizations on the ground who are actually doing the grassroots work with communities, stopping poaching, things like that, preserving wilderness areas, etc. So people can be activists in their own right simply by purchasing the book.
Absolutely.
Which is just amazing. Yeah. So if you would like the book, we're going to put the website up on the screen for you now. It is available through HPH Publishing. And just to give you a little reminder here, this limited edition version of Aerial Art with the green cover is this one is a limited edition, and it comes with a 2,000 Rand gift voucher that you can put towards printing any of the magnificent images in this book. Just by the way, how many images are in the book? Do you remember?
60,
I mean, it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot. And they're all double page spreads.
Yes.
I think it's close to 80.
Is it?
Somewhere between 60 and
absolutely staggering though. I mean, you know, just when you open it, I mean, it's so beautiful how it opens and stuff. But every single page is just something staggering and new and different. And like when you talk about fractals of nature and that sort of thing, I mean, it does. It looks like biology, doesn't it? It looks like a kidney, or in some cases a lung, or whatever. It's absolutely astonishing. There's one of my favorites, as we know. But the inside of both books contains the same number and sequence of images, obviously. And I'm going to show you again the standard edition very quickly. This one with the beautiful flamingos, that is the standard edition of Aerial Art. And when you purchase this one, it comes with a gift voucher with 500 Rand, and that can also go towards purchasing any of the art prints. So Jay and Jan Roeder, thank you so much for sharing your incredible adventure with us today. I've so loved chatting to you guys.
Thanks, Boo.
And I actually can't...
Thanks for having us.
I will, such a pleasure. I can't wait to see the next adventure and the next book. I mean, I'm sure that you are documenting everything, and that we'll just get the opportunity to come along on the adventure with you.
Yeah, we've got some lovely ideas for the next book in the series. So
can you share anything?
Well, I think Indian Ocean Islands and
Wow.
the Swahili coastline is something we're very interested in next.
Pack an extra bikini.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe that's why I crashed. Come to think about it.
Might have been.
I wasn't focusing.
Well, thank you both to you guys. I've
Thanks,
had
Boo.
just the most fabulous hour having a chat to you. I
It's
really,
been
really
great.
appreciate it.
Thank
Thank
you
you for
very
your
much.
time.
Thanks, it's been wonderful to share.
Thank you for joining us. And again, if you would like to get hold of either of these beautiful editions of Aerial Art, they are available on the HPH Publishing website. Until next time, thank you for being with us. Cheers.